This is going to be interesting because I feel like I don't normally have too many hot takes when it comes to ranking and listing things. Like, sure, I might like Halloween 5 a little bit more than the average person, but generally I think that most of my lists kind of fall in line similarly to what other people would rank movies. But when it comes to all of the Predator films, I'm looking at my rankings right now. I figured it out. I watched all of the Predator movies this week, including the new one, and I'm ready to give my personal subjective opinion on this franchise. And even I am shocked about where I rank some of these movies, and I would have never expected this list to turn out the way that it did. So here's going to be my ranking of the Predator franchise. Go ahead and put your ranking down in the comments below. And this is just a subjective video. It's not meant to be what I think is the best made film. I am completely ranking these movies on just my personal preferences and what I want to see in a Predator movie. So with that being said, let's start this list out. Now, despite where I rank some of these movies, I really do only think there are two movies in the Predator franchise that are absolutely terrible. And before I started watching all of these films, I would have never imagined, never could have conceived of the concept in a million years that there would be a Predator movie that I like less than Alien vs. Predator Requiem. I thought there's no chance in hell. There's no possible way. But this week, I watched a Predator movie for the first time that I'd never seen before, and somehow, against all odds, it was worse. And I'm talking about The Predator. Honestly, my mind is blown. This was the only Predator movie I'd never seen, other than Badlands, obviously, because it hadn't come out yet. But I went into this with an open mind. I kept thinking, there's no possible way that this movie is as bad as people say it is, right? There's no possible way this movie could be worse than Alien vs. Predator Requiem, and somehow it is. I could understand maybe having some fun with this movie if you just go into it looking at it as a pure comedy and you just don't give a shit. But there's nothing I liked about this movie other than a couple of kill scenes. There's a couple of good kills, but I didn't like anything else about this movie. I didn't like what they were doing with the Predator. I didn't like the whole DNA thing, the whole autism thing, the wacky action of this movie, the silliness of it, the comedy that did not work for me. Everything that was happening in this movie, I just did not like. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like anything that was going on. The CGI was terrible. The Predator dogs were terrible. I just hated this movie with every fiber of my being. It was absolutely terrible. I said in my review of this movie, it reminded me of like a Michael Bay Transformers movie in tone. In the spirit of this movie, the way this movie felt to me was like they were trying to make some kind of Michael Bay Transformers movie with the cheesy one-liners, the way the dialogue really only was there to just set up the next scene and nothing more, the wacky action, the stupid humor, the overuse of CGI, everything in this movie just, I was like, I am watching a completely different style, a completely different tone of anything that I ever want in a Predator movie. And I think that that is kind of what lends me to rank this last, because the next movie is going to be Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And I also think that this is a terrible movie. This is my least favorite movie of the Alien franchise. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm a massive fan of the Alien franchise as a whole, but the Predator franchise I never got into quite as much. So seeing this as an Alien fan, this was the worst movie in that franchise. So crossing over with Predator, I also assumed it would be the worst. I can't believe it's not. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still a bad movie, but there's a couple of things that actually do give it an edge for me over The Predator. I think number one is just the fact that this is more of a horror movie, which aligns more with my personal sensibilities. This is basically like a cheesy slasher with terrible, disposable, throwaway teen characters that are meant to get killed off in a variety of ways throughout the course of the movie. And although there are many, many, many better slasher movies out there that do it better than this, if I'm going to choose between a shitty slasher movie or a shitty Transformers movie, it's going to be a shitty slasher movie. And that's what this movie reminds me more of. But other than that, yeah, this movie is also terrible. It's so dark that you can't see anything going on. The characters suck. It doesn't really deliver on the premise. There is aliens and predators fighting, but the whole thing was building up towards this pred alien creature that, spawned from the dead Predator in the previous Alien versus Predator movie. So you were going to have a hybrid of the two, which on paper, in concept, especially having it take place on planet Earth in the middle of a town, there's some really cool ideas that are happening here, but none of them are really fulfilled. We don't really get a whole lot out of the pred alien that we want to see. The fights are shrouded in darkness and we can't tell what's going on. The characters are not fun to follow. And ultimately, it just becomes kind of a wet fart of a concept. But next up on my list, in my number 7 spot, this is going to be the point where I start to make some people mad. Because I'm going to put Predator Badlands. Okay, hear me out for just a second, okay? I think this is a good movie. I think this is a well-made movie. I think this is a fun movie. But I do have a lot of problems with it, and it doesn't give me what I personally want in a Predator movie. I prefer the darker aspects of Predator. I prefer the more horror-based elements of Predator. And, frankly, seeing the Predator as a main character sounds good on paper. It's a cool concept. I'm glad this movie exists in the sense that I think variety is good for a franchise. You don't want every single movie to be exactly the same. So I'm glad they tried it. I'm glad they did it. I'm glad that it exists for the people that want this kind of movie. No hate to anybody that loves this movie. And right now, this movie is getting tons of praise. And I've seen other rankings and people are putting it up at their number 2, number 3, putting it very, very high up. But for me personally, I think that the concept kind of wore out its welcome and lost steam about 30 to 40 minutes into the movie. And once we kind of shifted away from the Predator going to this planet in order to hunt down the most dangerous creature into that being sidelined so that the Weyland-Yutani robots could be the main threat, and really they're just fodder that can be easily killed off. I felt like it lost its potential. I think it lost its stakes. I think it lost the tension. And at that point, it just became a lot of like CG action battles, which are just not necessarily my cup of tea. I mean, I like it a little bit, but when the entire movie is that, it's just not necessarily for me. So I don't think this is like the other two movies where I think it's a bad movie. I think this movie succeeds in what it's trying to do. It just doesn't work for me personally all the way through. I like the beginning of it. I like the opening. I like the idea of this dangerous planet with all of these creatures that want to kill you. I like the creature designs, the aliens, the species that are on this planet. I think there's good stuff in here, but it's just not my type of Predator movie. Then in my number 6 spot, I'm going to put Predators from 2010. So this is not a perfect movie. It's got plenty of flaws. It's pretty cheesy. However, I do think that this is probably the most underrated movie in the Predator franchise. It's the one I hear people talk about the least. And I think that's probably because, just like on my list, it fits somewhere in the middle. It's not good enough to be praised as one of the best, but it's also not so bad that it's one of the worst. So it fits in this really weird spot in the middle of the franchise where, like, it's good, it's entertaining, they do some creative stuff here, and it has an all-star cast. You got Adrian Brody, Mahershala Ali, you got Lawrence Fishburne, Topher Grace, Walton Goggins, Danny Trejo. Like, this movie is filled with great actors, and you kind of forget about it until you watch it again. I also think the practical effects are good here. There is some overuse of CGI, which makes no sense to me. Like, do we need CGI cockroaches? I don't know if we need that, but when it comes to the Predators themselves and like the animatronics and the practical effects of the Predators, I think it looks really good. I think they tried to do as close as they could to the first 2 Predator movies with these creatures in this, and I think that part works. And for the majority of this movie, I'm pretty bought onto the concept that we have this whole team of characters that are like the worst of the worst. They're the antithesis of the group of characters from the first Predator movie. They're all cartel members and murderers and terrible people, and they're stuck on this planet and they're being hunted by predators. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here. It doesn't all 100% work, and unfortunately it's not as good as it could be, but I do think that this movie is very underappreciated. Then in my number 5 spot, I'm going to put the first Alien versus Predator. And I will be the first to admit that I am biased here because I am a massive fan of the Alien franchise. And if you put xenomorphs in a movie, that's going to give it a huge edge for me. Like, I'm not going to rank it too high because, well, the movie's not great to begin with, but also I'm ranking this as a Predator franchise ranking, right? So like I'm trying to think of what I want out of a Predator movie. But for the first run of Alien vs. Predator, the Paul W.S. Anderson movie, I think that after the halfway point, like once we actually get to the Predators fighting aliens, I think it does deliver on the premise, and I think there is a lot of good stuff here when it comes to the action, when it comes to the spectacle. And I also got to say that this is really the only other alien movie other than Aliens that prominently features an alien queen. And I gotta give it some respect for that, because pretty much all the other Alien movies, except for Resurrection and a couple of scenes, don't really feature the Queen alien. This movie, we have a huge battle at the end of the movie with the Queen fighting the Predator, fighting the last human character that survives, and it's pretty awesome. And once again, I am biased because, you know, this movie came out when I was in my early teenage years, and I saw it early, and I saw it when I was getting into all these horror movies and the Alien films and stuff, and so it does have kind of a special place in my heart for that era of movies. You know, it came out post Freddy versus Jason, where they were like, hey, these versus movies might actually work. Let's try to do this. And I appreciate it for what it is. The characters kind of suck. But when it gets to the Alien versus Predator stuff in the movie, which is what you pay your money for, I think there's some good stuff here. Then in my number 4 spot, I am going to put Prey. I really, really like this movie. I think it has some flaws, some silliness in it here and there, maybe a little bit too much luck for Naru in the final battle, but everything else I think is great. I think the look of this movie is fantastic. I think the action scenes and the kill sequences, that entire scene where the Predator is just ripping through all of the fur trappers, is some of the best carnage in any of the Predator movies as far as I'm concerned. I like the more primitive nature of this Predator. I like Naru as a main character. I think she's fantastic. The scenery of this movie, it's beautiful to look at with all of the landscapes and the sunsets. And this movie does something that I've wanted Predator to do for a long time, and that's set it in a different time period. I love that this takes place in the 1700s. I would love an entire set of films, and we'll talk about another one here in a few minutes, where you know, it takes place in different eras of time, dealing with different types of characters with different technology, and to see how they handle the Predator. Hell, I would love to see a Predator movie take place far into the future, like do a Blade Runner type world and then throw the Predator there. But through history, yeah, I mean, I think this is a brilliant idea, and I think that this capitalizes on that and nails it pretty much, you know? Other than a few little gripes I have here or there, I think this is a great Predator movie and one of my favorites. But in my number 3 spot, I'm going to put Predator 2. And this actually, in my mind, I was thinking I was going to rank below Prey before I rewatched them. But I rewatched all the Predator movies recently, and I got to say, I think Predator 2 is probably the most underrated Predator movie of the whole franchise. This movie is awesome. But you kind of have to go along with the premise a little bit, which is obviously taking Predator, doing what the first movie did, but now setting it in the middle of a city. And if you go back in time and you look at the Predator franchise in its early days, you can kind of see the vision here, because the first Predator movie is basically like watching, you know, an Arnold Schwarzenegger commando type movie, but then halfway through you throw in a Predator and shit goes crazy. And Predator 2 is kind of like watching a Lethal Weapon movie, an action crime thriller. Danny Glover's in there. You keep wanting him to say, I'm getting too old for this shit, the whole movie. And then you just insert a Predator. And if we kept going with that, like imagine we took different genres of film. Like we got the Schwarzenegger movie, we got the city crime movie. Imagine if we did a whole other genre, you know, and then just threw the Predator in there somewhere. The only spot where this movie falls flat for me a little bit is in the middle. I think it does kind of drag, and that sort of like made me wonder which one I would put up, you know, between Predator 2 and Prey. But I think Predator 2 does edge it out just simply because I think the movie feels more intense. I think this movie is really scary, actually. I remember when I was a kid, I was very disturbed by this movie. This movie scared me more than the first one. I think it's because you do see a little bit more of the aftermath, you know, with the characters being skinned alive and everything. And of course, there's the entire ending sequence where Danny Glover is just, you know, all bets are off, and he is just hunting down and trying to kill this Predator. He calls him Pussyface. He chases him to the spaceship, and then we get all that extra Predator lore. We get the tease of the xenomorph skull. We get the final fight inside the spaceship, and I actually like this movie a lot. I think this is a great fantastic movie. The most underrated of the whole series. But in my number 2 spot, and this is also the part of the video that's going to piss a lot of people off, I'm sure, I'm putting the animated movie Predator: Killer of Killers. I remember when I reviewed this earlier this year and I was so stoked about it, a lot of the comments were super, super negative. People don't like this movie, and, you know, we're all free to like whatever we want. But for me, I fucking loved this movie. I thought this was incredible. And I'm not even like a big fan of this particular style of animation, but this worked for me. Number one, it took a concept, like I was saying earlier, that I've always wanted to see, which is the predators in different time periods. It made it an anthology, but then it also brought everything together at the end. We get to see a predator in the Viking Age. We get to see a predator in feudal Japan fighting a samurai. We get to see a predator during World War II. And each one of those individual stories I thought were great, with great characters. And then all of a sudden, the ending of this movie throws all of those characters together in this coliseum on the Predator homeworld where they have to battle each other. But at the same time, what I thought was so unique is that they all are from different eras and speak different languages. And so they have to try to communicate with one another. You know, you got one person speaking Japanese, one person speaking English, one in like Old Norse or whatever. And like, they can't communicate and they can't, you know, try to figure out what's going on. None of them know what's going on. They're all from different eras of time. And then you have this like badass predator on the top of the Coliseum with his like huge cape made out of bones and skulls or whatever. And have to have them team up to fight this giant creature. I don't know. This movie was just badass to me from start to finish. I thought it was awesome. I don't care that it's animated. It's literally my second favorite Predator movie, and I loved it. I don't care what anyone else has to say about it. People can talk shit about this movie all they want. I thought it was fantastic. But the number 1 Predator movie, there's no question whatsoever. It's the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. This isn't just the best Predator movie. This is one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. It's in my top, 100, probably top 50 favorite movies of all time. It's one of the best Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I think the only one that beats it is Terminator 2. And I can watch this movie endlessly, and I have. I've watched this since childhood so many times. I think it's the perfect action movie. It's the perfect subversion to an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and it gives you pretty much everything that you could possibly want in a movie like this. And again, going back in time, imagine you don't know what the Predators are, you don't know what the Yautja is, and you're just watching these characters that are built up to be the ultimate badasses be taken out one by one by some mysterious creature in the wilderness that is seeing in infrared vision. It's actually pretty terrifying. And whenever I watch this movie, similar to when I watched the original Alien, I try to put myself in the headspace of like, pretend I don't know anything about this creature. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what it does. And if you can somehow put yourself into that headspace, then this movie becomes terrifying, because these characters have no idea how to handle this. They don't know what it can do. They don't know what its technology is. They don't know if it's a human, if it's a creature that lives in the woods. We find out it's an alien, but like, it's just done so well, and the tension is built up so steadily. And ultimately, having Arnold, who is decked out with all of this heavy artillery, have to strip himself of it, cover himself in mud, and face the creature down in a more primal way is just so, it's just so good. It's just such a great idea for an action horror sci-fi movie, and it nails it. If there's any movie, this is the only movie of all the Predator films, in my opinion, that's a 10 out of 10. Perfect movie, and can never be topped. So there you guys have it. That is my personal ranking of all of the Predator movies. Please tell me what you think about it down below. That's going to be one of my more interesting ranking lists, I'm sure. And also put your ranking down below, or at least your top 3, top 5, whatever you want to do. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I appreciate it. Give it a thumbs up and a comment. Help it out in the algorithm. If you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships and all the social media links where you can follow me down below. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and get to the chopper!